This is a difficult and complex question, and it has to do with the value of education, how it's financed, and the choices people make. We hear a lot about college debt, but that debt is assumed voluntarily because those college students assume they're going to make more money because they get a good education. We hear that it's such a tragedy that they have debt after they assume debt, so why shouldn't we just forgive them? Well, why shouldn't we forgive all debt? We don't operate that way. When you borrow money, you're expected to pay it back. And what's the value of education? And why should you pay for a college student's education? The college student is the one who's benefiting from it, so the college student should pay for it. The whole idea of public education is aimed at the young ones, to make sure that we have citizens who can read and write and do basic math. But that basic education has grown into an enormous industry, costing trillions of dollars. And from what I see of college students today, many of them are not getting educations that are necessarily going to give them a lot of income. So why is it that the taxpayer should foot the bill for all this education that isn't going anywhere? Now the question asked is, how do we solve this problem? Talk about tuition freezes, talk about how the state should control this monster that it has created. Well, the first thing to do, I'm out of time.
I'm okay if you want a little bit more time. Guys, can you remind me what how the rules, do I get 2 minutes to respond to this as well?
You get 2 minutes, then he gets 30 seconds to give a rebuttal on your statement.
Sounds like a plan, thank you. Yes, I support a freeze. I supported the freeze that went into place 2 years ago. I support an ongoing freeze. There used to be a covenant between Minnesota families and the state of Minnesota and our institutions of higher learning, and that is we split the cost. Families picked up half the cost, and the state picked up half the cost. That then changed dramatically over the last decade and a half, where now we've got students and families are picking up 2/3 of the cost. For the first time in a long time, over the last couple of years, we froze tuition, not just at the University of Minnesota, but at all colleges and institutions across the state of Minnesota. That had an indirect impact as well, in that the colleges are competing with one another. Many of the private colleges followed suit because they're competing with the university, they're competing with state colleges. They did the same thing. It worked, and I hope to continue, and I expect to continue doing it again for the next 2 years. The other side is the part that Don referenced in terms of the debt side. One of the things that we did just this last year, and by the way, student debt is eating people up. How many of you were able to afford your own way through college like I was? Some hands, how many think their kids will be able to do that? 1, 2, 3, that's terrific. And my kids are almost there, they're all working full time in order to try to pay their own way. But it's a whole different equation now than it used to be. The challenge is we've got, in addition to the high cost, we also didn't give students the right to refinance. They had to stick with that same lender. We've now allowed them not only to consolidate, but to refinance, to go out into the market and get competing bids. We just did that in 2014. I expect that when you have banks that are competing, or lenders that are competing for your business, you'll be able to bring those rates down, just like you can with your own mortgage. So we've, besides the freeze, we've also done the element with respect to allowing for refinancing, and those two pieces I think are critical. I still got time left if you want to complete your... All right, never mind. We'll go on to the next one.
30 seconds. I think if you go back in the history of the legislation in the last 15 years, you'll find that there have been numerous tuition freezes and programs to hold down the cost. And I think it's safe to say it's not working. Costs continue to go up. The cost of college education keeps going up. And we hear more and more talk of how the education is inadequate, how it's not doing the job, how there's disparities. I think a little freedom, a little flexibility, and not run from St. Paul is the answer, not more programs.